Guys, welcome to another video. In this video, we will covering the topic of immutability and what it means in Java. So as the definition says that an immutable object is one whose internal state cannot be modified once it is created. What this basically means is when we use the new operator to create instantiate a new object, we cannot change the state of the properties after that step. So we will see with an example what it means in practice. Are there any immutable objects already there in Java? Yes. String is a popular class which most of us know. Other examples are the wrapper classes like integer, long, Boolean, etc. So let us get into with an example how to create a new immutable object. So let us create an object, my object class. Let us add some properties. Let us add a date field. Let us add a list field which looks like a mutable field. Now in usual practice what we do is we create a getter setter for this Pojo, but when we want to create a mutable object, there are a few steps. First step is like it should not have any setters. So let us delete all the setters which can stay in the change the internal state of the property of the class. So here we delete all the setter, only getters are available. The second stage is declaring everything as final, starting from the class to the attributes. So we declare the class as final so that no one can extend and provide some setters override. So here we declare it as final. Now the obvious thing with declaring them as final is like we have to create a constructor with these arguments to initialize them. So the initialize is done. Now one key point to note here is for complex objects. For primitive objects like int types, it is fine, Java internally will take care. But for complex object like date or list, we have to create a defensive copy. What this basically means is we have to do something like this. For example, for date, we are creating a new date instance object by passing like from the one that is passed from the param. Similarly, for the list, we have to create a new list object like this. Now this is step 2. Step 3 is similar, whatever we have done in the constructor, same thing we have to do in the getter for complex objects. Similarly, when someone invokes the get today, we should be returning a new date object with dot get with a new instantiation of a date object, so that we do not give access to the caller to access this class's property. Similarly with for this one, like this. So this is called defensive copying of it. Now once we provide these things, then the class is kind of we can say we have followed the immutability pattern. Now let us verify it with some examples. So let us create a so we have to pass something. ID is 100. The date is let's pass so we have what we are doing is we have declared a date type which is today and a list which in the list we have added these two strings names. Now we instantiated this object. Now if we have followed the proper pattern of immutability, then ideally this line what I'm going to write should return false, which is So I'm equating the reference of this today, which I have passed it in the constructor here, and what I'm getting it from by invoking the getter of this object. Similarly, the same thing should happen for the list also. These should print false. Let us see, verify whether we have done it right or not. So we see false. Okay. Now just to make sure, one more step. So let us, what we have added in this step, let us add uh, PQR here. Now in this list, I have added one more field. But if we have followed the pattern of immutability properly, then my object dot get person name still should have two items in the list. So let us verify once. So as you can see, the first one where we have added PQR is there, but the my object still remains unchanged, even though we passed the same reference here in the constructor to my object, but these two behave independently. So basically, this is what it means to create an immutable object in Java. Let us come back to the definition part and the benefits part. So why is it required to do that? So in a multi-threaded context, so this immutability is very important because we can pass these objects around multiple threads, and we can be assured that it will behave in a thread safe manner. So that is the advantage of using immutable objects. Points, frequently missed points about it is like whenever we use whenever we use hash-based data structures, the key, if we use it, whenever we use it, the key as a complex object, it should be an immutable object. For example, if we define a map like where the key is this my object, uh, so we have to ensure that this key is always an immutable object. Otherwise, the problem is if we declare some mutable objects, then at runtime, when you insert the keys into the map, after that, if the properties gets changed, then the hash also gets changed, and you won't be able to retrieve the object from the map. So that's why it's essential to use the key of hash data structures as immutable objects. This is point number one. Point number two is whenever we use some kind of functional programming, we should adhere to the principle or the paradigm of immutability. Like the functions, the lambda function should not mutate any object. For example, very often we might be tempted to do something like this. So in this line, what we are doing is we have defined this string of 1, 2, 3, and we are adding it to this list, string list. So just for the sake of it, I'm adding it to this, even though it's an integer. So this is kind of an anti-pattern because we are passing this as a function, whereas we are mutating this list object. So this is kind of an anti-pattern. So in this scenario, it's better to use normal for loops like this to achieve the same purpose. So this is the other point. Like whenever we are using lambda function, it's better to use not better not to violate the mutability. Yep, that's it for now. Bye bye.